Welcome to the True Guy Globe Brief Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for updates. The world awoke to a headline that echoed across continents. Insurgent stronghold overrun in dawn raid. It was the kind of news that made people stop and take notice, a story that seemed to signal a turning point in a long and bitter conflict. The Sierra Madre Mountains, once considered an impenetrable fortress and a no-go zone for government forces, had finally fallen to a small, determined Filipino unit. The impossible had been achieved in the misty dawn. News reports focused on tactics, firepower, and the element of surprise. But one detail stood out among the usual analysis. A Japanese military observer, Colonel Kenji Nakamura, was embedded with the Filipino unit, quietly watching and taking notes. His debriefing, submitted to his superiors, contained a single, cryptic line that puzzled analysts everywhere. Their strength is not in their weapons. This was not the language of a typical military report. It was something different, something that hinted at a deeper truth beneath the surface. It hinted at something deeper, something that numbers and statistics could not explain. The world measured victory and territory gained in lines moved on a map, but Nakamura saw something else entirely. He saw a force driven by an invisible power, a spirit that seemed to move them forward even when the odds were stacked against them. He witnessed courage that defied military doctrine, bravery that could not be taught in any academy or manual. This story isn't just about the battle. It's about what the colonel learned in those mountains, far from home and far from the familiar. It's about a discovery that would change his understanding of war, strength, and the very nature of humanity itself. The initial reports painted a picture of a brutal uphill fight, a desperate struggle in the thick jungle. The odds were against the Filipino soldiers, yet they succeeded where others had failed, emerging exhausted but triumphant. The official narrative praised their resilience and skill, but Nakamura's quiet presence added a layer of intrigue and mystery. He was there to analyze, to document, to report every detail for his government, but he found himself drawn in by what he saw. But something in the Sierra Madre changed him, leaving a mark that would last long after the battle was over. He saw soldiers not just as fighters but as brothers, bound by loyalty, sacrifice, and a sense of shared destiny. He saw them share rations, sing songs to lift their spirits, and pray together with sincerity and hope, even in the darkest moments. This was the unseen front. The battle fought with belief, not bullets, and a unity that no enemy could break. Colonel Kenji Nakamura was the embodiment of discipline, posture perfect, uniform immaculate, mind analytical. Every detail of his appearance and demeanor spoke of a man who valued order above all else, a living symbol of the military code he so strictly followed. He saw war as a science, logistics, strategy, numbers. To him, every battle was a complex equation, every campaign a puzzle to be solved with logic and calculation. Known as the statistician, he predicted outcomes with cold precision. His reputation was built on his ability to forecast victories and defeats before the first shot was fired, relying on data rather than instinct. Emotions to him were liabilities. He believed that feelings clouded judgment and weakened resolve, so he kept his own tightly locked away. He arrived in the Philippines to confirm what he already knew. Strength was measured in firepower and discipline. He expected to find order, numbers, and efficiency, just as he had always calculated. Soldiers were assets, units were components. In his mind, they were pieces on a chessboard, each with a role to play in the grand design of war. He observed drills, marksmanship, and endurance, recording everything in his notebook. Every shot fired, every step marched, was another data point in his meticulous records. But the Sierra Madre was no sterile training ground. It was a living, breathing world, untamed and unpredictable, where the rules he trusted began to blur. The jungle was alive, unpredictable. It shifted and changed, hiding dangers and opportunities in equal measure, defying his attempts to control it. The soldiers he watched were not machines. They laughed, joked, carried photos of family. Their camaraderie and warmth stood in stark contrast to the cold calculations in his notebook. These were variables he couldn't quantify. Their bonds, their stories, their laughter, none of it fit into his equations. For the first time, uncertainty crept in. Doubt began to gnaw at the edges of his confidence, making him question what he truly understood about war. His equations didn't fit this place. The numbers failed to capture the spirit that animated these men, the unpredictable force that drove them forward. The Filipino soldiers' spirit defied his logic. Their unity and determination seemed to give them strength beyond what statistics could explain. He was a man of science, but the Sierra Madre was governed by different laws. Here, the heart mattered as much as the mind, and the jungle respected neither rank nor calculation. He kept his distance, but the gap between observer and observed was closing. Each day, he found himself drawn closer to the men he once saw as mere statistics. The more he watched, the more he realized he was missing something vital. There was a strength here that could not be measured, a resilience that defied calculation. The heart of the unit was not in its tactics, but in its humanity. Their courage, compassion, and loyalty were the true sources of their power, and that was something his training had never prepared him for. In the wilds of the Sierra Madre, Colonel Nakamura began to understand that some things could never be reduced to numbers. Nakamura embedded with a frontline Philippine army unit in the rugged highlands. The environment was an adversary: mud, rock, relentless heat. His training valued silence and order, but the Filipino camp was alive with laughter and music. He saw camaraderie where he expected discipline. Soldiers shared food, tended gardens, listened to distant broadcasts. He viewed their warmth as a weakness. How could men who joked be ready for death? Yet they carried their homes and faith into battle. He recorded high social cohesion, morale high. But his clinical notes failed to capture the essence. The unit felt more like a family than a military company. Captain Reyes led with quiet confidence, not authority. Nakamura realized he was missing the most important part of the story. The mission was high risk, a dawn assault on an insurgent camp. Soldiers prepped gear in silence, but instead of a final briefing, Captain Reyes called them into a circle. Helmets off, a rosary held aloft, they prayed. It wasn't ritual, it was a quiet, heartfelt plea. Nakamura, outside the circle, saw it as wasted time, a vulnerability. But their faces showed calm, not fear. The prayer united them, not just as soldiers but as brothers. They placed their trust in something higher than command. When the prayer ended, the atmosphere shifted. Fear transformed into resolve. Nakamura wrote pre-mission ritual group prayer. Effect on morale, significant. For the first time his language felt inadequate. He realized courage here was not the suppression of fear but its transformation. The men were ready, not just for battle, but for sacrifice. Their strength came from faith, not just training. The colonel's worldview was shaken. He saw unity that no doctrine could teach. The unseen front was now visible, and it was powerful. Weeks passed, and Nakamura's perspective shifted. He saw acts of bravery and kindness, soldiers sharing water with enemies, risking lives for fallen comrades. These actions defied logic and doctrine. At night, he replayed the day's events, haunted by the prayer before battle. Here, emotion was fuel, not a flaw. The soldiers' strength came from connection, to each other, to faith, to family. Their discipline wasn't perfect, their equipment outdated, but their spirit was unbreakable. They endured hardship without complaint, motivated by purpose, not fear or reward. Their belief in their mission gave them a strength training couldn't provide. Nakamura, the man of science, was witnessing the power of faith. It shook him to his core. The cracks in his armor widened. He began to see that true strength was rooted in something deeper than logic. And he couldn't look away. Nakamura needed answers. He sat in silence, searching for meaning in the quiet before sunrise, wondering what truly drove men to risk everything. He asked Corporal Santos, the young gardener, why he fought. The question lingered in the air, heavy with expectation. Santos showed a photo of his daughter, her smile fragile yet full of hope. "I fight for her," he said softly, "so she can live without fear, so her future is safe." It wasn't for government or flag, it was for family. The honesty stunned Nakamura, who had never heard such a simple, powerful reason. He asked Sergeant Cruz, a veteran, "What keeps you going after all these years and battles?" "Belief, sir. I believe in what we do, and in these boys. They're my family now, and I would do anything for them." Captain Reyes explained leadership. He said, "I don't lead. We walk together, side by side, sharing every hardship and every hope. My authority is their trust. Without it, I am nothing. Their faith in me is my greatest responsibility." Each conversation peeled back Nakamura's old beliefs, revealing a new understanding of courage and loyalty. The Filipino soldier's greatest weapon wasn't his rifle. It was his heart, his compassion, and his unwavering spirit. Love for family, faith in God, loyalty to comrades. These were the invisible shields that protected them. These were strengths you couldn't measure, but you could feel them in every gesture and every sacrifice. Nakamura realized war was personal, not just political. It was about people, not just nations. The soldiers' motivation was deeply human, rooted in love, hope, and the bonds they shared. Their unity was their shield, their togetherness a force stronger than any weapon. He saw that belief, not orders, drove them forward, giving them strength in the darkest moments. And that belief was unbreakable, forged in hardship and tested by war. The colonel's understanding of war was forever changed. He saw now that true strength came from within. He was learning what truly made a soldier strong. Not just discipline or training, but the love and conviction that lived in their hearts. In daily rituals, Nakamura saw the soldiers' true strength. Food was shared, never hoarded, a meal was communion. Even the colonel was welcomed into their circle. Their kindness extended to enemies. Wounded captives were treated with care. Compassion, not cruelty, defined them. At night, music filled the camp, songs of home, faith, and longing. It was healing, not distraction. These acts weren't footnotes, they were the source of resilience. Mutual support built trust stronger than any hierarchy. They fought for each other, not just for orders. Kindness was their armor, binding them together. Their unity made them unbreakable. Nakamura realized this was a currency more valuable than bullets. The dawn raid was brutal, but the Filipino soldiers fought as one. Their coordination was instinctive, their resolve unshakable. They won, but at a cost. Casualties weighed heavy. Nakamura expected hardened indifference or despair. Instead, he saw open grief. Soldiers wept, comforted each other, honored the fallen. The chaplain led a prayer not for victory but for strength and gratitude. Solace was found in faith and shared pain. The fallen were carried back with reverence, not as casualties but as brothers. The camp was silent that night, not broken, but united in remembrance. Their faith and love for one another allowed them to endure the unthinkable. Nakamura saw that resilience was not about suppressing pain but sharing it. The unit bent, but did not break. Their foundation was unshakable. The colonel understood. This was strength beyond tactics. The true victory was in their unity. The lesson was clear. He would never see war the same way again. As his assignment ended, Colonel Nakamura wrote his final report. The data he'd collected felt meaningless. Numbers couldn't explain what he'd witnessed. War, he realized, was an affair of the heart. True strength was forged in love, faith, and loyalty. He wrote, "I came to observe a military unit. I leave having witnessed a family. Their strength cannot be measured. Love for family, unwavering faith, and loyalty to each other made them unbreakable." His own armor of logic was gone, replaced by humility and respect. In his debriefing, he spoke not of tactics but of character. The Filipino soldier does not just fight, he believes. That belief is a strategic advantage no enemy can counter. To understand their strength, look into their hearts. True courage is loving something more than you fear death. That is the secret to their power, a lesson Nakamura would carry forever.